So good evening. Vulnerability is about trust and risk-taking. And with that being said, I am going to do something that very few American Southerners would attempt to do, and that is tell a short story. So in 2016, Terrence, as a new, young innovation member on the innovation team in the city of Mobile, received a call from the chief of staff. The chief of staff said, Terrence, the mayor needs your help. And imagine sitting over in your office, moving through notes all the time and just thinking of that one moment the mayor calls you and you're springing into action. So I jumped up and I ran to the mayor's office, which was across the street. And I said, Mayor, I'm here. He said, we've had a string of youth-involved gun violence incidents. Can you help us? And I said, yes. He said, well, we're gonna have an internal staff meeting followed by a press conference. And I said, whoa, press conference. I don't know the problem yet. So I go out with the mayor. We have this meeting. We have this very quick meeting about what's going on and how we need to create safe, fun spaces for kids to be a part of. So we went out immediately, press conference. We go to this press conference, and the mayor is there, and we have all these signs say, fun, hope, safe. And the mayor said, Terrence, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough kids. Can you take out that blazer and hold this sign? So I trusted him. I grabbed that sign and I held it up and it said fun. And then the mayor said, now it's time for us to figure out what we're gonna do about this issue of creating fun spaces for kids to go. And I had no idea of Parks and Rec or any of this. And so he said, I'm assigning you to Parks and Rec. And I was like, whoa, a new job. So I go in immediately to Parks and Rec department and I realized that it was horrible. They didn't have anything, no basketball goals, no TVs, no games, nothing for kids to play. It was a desolate space. So how could we get kids to go inside of the space when we had nothing for them and the staff was lacking hope? Fast forward, we did a full overhaul of the system. We went in, we had these discussions. We spoke with everyone, and I realized that the staff, they were really creative bureaucrats, but they had nothing to operate with. With that being said, I go into this space and I said, we're gonna have to speak to all of the stakeholders. Now imagine, no one's coming into these spaces, so they don't know what their stakeholders or who their stakeholders are. So we come in, we have these discussions, we bring in the innovation team, and we go through this design thinking process where we start working with all of the staff members internally to understand exactly where they were. What's the current state of this system across the entire city in Parks and Rec? And then we went out and talked about what is the future of Parks and Rec? What do you believe? What do you want this to be? And they told us all this stuff. And then now we realized there's a gap. And so with that gap, we said, is this a process that you deem as trustworthy? They said, yes. So we had them go out and conduct the same process with the stakeholders, external stakeholders. They deemed this process as being trustworthy. They saw it work for them. So we went out to collect the information from the residents. We were able to fill that gap. Once we were able to fill that gap, they were all bought into this process, right? We hadn't delivered anything yet, but they saw their voices going on that piece of paper and being aggregated with everyone else's voice. That gave them more trust in the government than they had ever had before. So before we even get to understanding how to build trust with residents, we have to figure out how we build trust with our frontline staff members, the people who touch the people who are receiving the services directly and in a very real way. Fast forward, I say fast forward 2 years later. So we get 2 years later, we've been building trust along this way. We've started working with civil service organizations, having them come in and help meet the needs of these centers. So we have these quick wins that are going. Those quick wins led to medium-sized wins as we realized that these communities had a very strong fear of the police. So we brought police in to serve as camp counselors as a part of their cadet training. So before they receive their badges, now they're inside. They're working with students and elderly people directly. That gave the community a very different level of trust for police. So now police are welcome into that community. Kids aren't running from police. The fear is diminished. And then fast forward past that a year later, Parks and Rec is now the most sought after department in the entire city. It is the most trustworthy system in the entire government. How did that happen? So after that, we celebrated. Parks and Rec went from having about 400 people come to Art Walk to about 28,000 people come to Art Walk because they trusted that this organization serves consistently and reliably every time. I'm gonna move from that to talk about what I've learned in that process. It's that we focus heavily on building trust in government. We should be focusing on our trustworthiness as a government. What does that mean? Our level of ability, humanity, and integrity, answering the questions, can they, do they, will they? If people can look at us and answer those questions, then it drives them to want to trust us. Also, what I've learned is that people want to live in a fair, just, and caring environment. What does that mean in reality for a government? It feels like a very squishy term. Caring, if we bring it to the levels of John Jones Tronto's ethics of caring, it means that we're attentive. We know when things are happening, we see the pain that we're causing and see how people are responding to our issues or our services. But then we also assume responsibility for what we can change as a government entity. We show the competence, and then we are responsive to what the changes are that we're making. The other side is that people want fairness. They want a fair government. They want a fair society. What does that mean? People want procedural fairness. They want informational fairness. They want this interpersonal fairness. And then this last level is that this justice. I remember listening to people saying, we want justice, justice, justice. And I'm thinking, like, what does it mean, though? And very few bureaucrats ever ask questions of, are we on the same line of thought when you're saying you want something? You're saying you want justice. So then we start doing this research, and it came out when people talk about they want justice, they want their lived experiences to be validated as expertise. If you take it back to the story that I told earlier about we went directly out to the people on the front lines and got their thoughts about where they currently were, and then where they wanted to be. And then we understood there was a gap, and then we used them to go out and collect the information from the residents that they had been disconnected from years, and they closed that gap. That is validating the lived experiences of the people closest to the problem as expertise. I'm gonna give you a very fancy Johns Hopkins research word for that. And it is, we're upholding the epistemic justice and the ontological justice, meaning that from the ontological side, we recognize the identities of all the stakeholders. We document that, and they all have the space, they belong. On this other side, with this epistemic justice, where everyone has the ability to actually donate their knowledge to the system. How do we do that? By avoiding the dangers of care. So the dangers of care would be paternalism and parochialism. It's this sense that we don't really have time for the people who have the issues because they're loud, they're aggressive. So we will make the decisions for them because we are the experts. That is how we invalidate the lived experiences of the people close to the problem as expertise. The other side of this issue is that parochialism is that we invite the people who like us and who we like and who think like us, and those people come in and they add their value, which then alienates everyone else. That's when we see social exclusion. And so with that being said, from my research and from my lived experiences that people want to live in a fair, just, and caring environment, it would do us all well to find ways to create that. It would do us all well to go to the people who are closest to the experience, understanding their experiences, building out that stakeholder map from that, and then I'll leave you with one last word that I've learned through my research. It's that the word "the" is the most dangerous word to building trust and innovation. It denotes everything as a monolith and prevents us from being particularistic and pluralistic in our approaches. What happens is that we say, I spoke to the community. It says, I spoke to the citizens. I'm angry at the government. What part of the government? What part of the system? What part of the city? Because as we know, there's never one thing. These systems, these places, these people are built up of networks. There's a network of people, and everyone demands a very different approach. With that being said, this is my time. Thanks for having me.